The galaxy had been at war for years, a war that seemed endless. Human forces and the Zavira, an ancient alien race, had fought in countless battles, each one taking a heavy toll. The war had begun over territory, resources, and power, but it had grown into something much larger than anyone had anticipated. And in the center of this conflict stood Captain Alex Carter, a hero among humans. He had fought in some of the fiercest battles the galaxy had ever seen. His name had become a symbol of hope for his people, the man who led his forces to victory time and again. But despite the victories, the weight of the war never seemed to lift. The horrors of battle haunted Alex, especially the lives lost, both soldiers and civilians alike. Each victory felt hollow when faced with the grim reality of the cost. He couldn't shake the image of faces, of comrades he would never see again. The war had taken so much, and now that it was finally over, Alex didn't know what to do with himself. The war had ended, but peace seemed like a distant dream. The Zavira Empire, once a mighty force that spanned many star systems, was now in ruins. Their capital city was a shattered ghost of what it had once been. The alien species, led by their royal family, was broken, its leadership in tatters. The final blow had been delivered by a coalition of human forces, with Alex leading the charge. The galaxy had rejoiced in the fall of the Zavira, but there was no true celebration. It had come at too great a cost. Alex had returned to Earth as a hero, but no one could see the emptiness in his eyes. No one could hear the echoes of the war in his mind. He had returned to a home that felt foreign to him, a place that had moved on while he had been away, trapped in the heart of war. There were ceremonies, medals, and speeches, but none of it meant anything to him. The soldiers who had fought beside him had all gone their separate ways, and those who had died were now buried in the depths of space or on distant planets. Alex had been given a hero's welcome, but in his heart he felt like a man lost in time, a man who no longer knew what he was fighting for. It was in this state of confusion that he received the call, a mission, a diplomatic assignment, one that required his experience as both a soldier and a leader. The galaxy had moved on, and now it was time to help rebuild what had been torn apart. The war was over, but the work was just beginning. Alex had been tasked with helping to stabilize the Zavira colonies, ensuring that the chaos left behind by the war didn't spill over into full-blown anarchy. There was one specific colony that required his attention, a place deep in the Zavira territories, where the last of their royal family had been hiding, trying to keep their existence a secret. At first, Alex was reluctant. He had no desire to return to the lands of his former enemies. The memories were too fresh, the pain too raw. But duty called, and he was a soldier. He couldn't turn his back on the galaxy, even if it meant facing his past. The journey to the Zavira colony was long, the silence in the ship only broken by the hum of the engines. Alex sat alone in the cockpit, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. The stars seemed so distant, so cold. He wondered if there was any way to ever truly move on from the war. Could he ever return to the life he had once known? Or was he forever trapped in the shadows of the battlefield? As the ship approached the colony, Alex's mind raced. He knew what was waiting for him there, not just political turmoil, but a reminder of everything he had lost. He couldn't help but think of the faces of the Zavira he had killed, the soldiers who had fought against him with such conviction. The war had been a brutal thing, with no real winners, and now the galaxy had to pick up the pieces. But as the ship descended toward the colony, Alex's thoughts shifted. There was something about this mission, something he couldn't put his finger on. A feeling deep in his gut told him that this was no ordinary diplomatic task. This was personal. He landed on the dusty surface of the colony, the once grand city now a shadow of its former self. The buildings were half collapsed, the streets empty and silent. It was as if the people here had lost all hope. And in a way, they had. The royal family, once the heart of the Zavira, had been decimated. The last known survivor was a woman, a princess, who had been kept hidden away by a few loyal followers. Her name had been whispered in the darkest corners of the galaxy, but no one knew what had become of her. Alex stepped out of the ship, his boots crunching on the dry ground. The air was thick, carrying the scent of decay. There was no sign of life, no welcoming party, just silence. It was unsettling. His mission was simple: find the princess, ensure her safety, and help restore some semblance of order. But as he walked through the ruins of the city, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He felt eyes on him from the shadows, but when he turned, there was nothing there. It was as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. And then he saw her. She was standing in the doorway of an old building, her silhouette framed by the dim light inside. She was dressed in simple clothes, but there was no mistaking her regal posture. Even in these dark times, she held herself with a dignity that Alex remembered. His heart skipped a beat as he took in the sight of her. He hadn't seen her in years, not since they were children. Princess Lyra. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. It was like no time had passed at all, like the years of war, the bloodshed, and the destruction had never happened. They were just two old friends, standing in the ruins of a broken world. But Lyra wasn't the same as he remembered. She had grown into a strong, independent woman, the weight of her people's fate resting heavily on her shoulders. She had been shaped by the war, just as Alex had been. And now, as the last of her kind, she was a symbol of hope, or perhaps a symbol of their shared failure. "Alex," she said softly, her voice carrying across the distance between them. "You're the one they sent." Alex didn't know what to say. His mind was a swirl of confusion and memories, and the only thing he could do was nod. "Lyra," he said, his voice rough. "I never thought I'd see you again." She stepped forward, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to read him. "I never wanted you to see me like this," she said quietly. "But there's no going back now." Alex didn't know what to say. All he knew was that this wasn't just a mission. This was something far more personal. And the galaxy would never be the same. The days following Alex's arrival at the Zavira colony were filled with uncertainty. Princess Lyra, now the leader of a broken people, had become the focal point of Alex's mission. But he quickly realized that she was more than just a leader. She was a survivor. The years had changed her, but the connection between them, the bond forged in childhood, was still there, just as strong as ever. Lyra had grown up in the capital city of the Zavira Empire, a place of beauty, culture, and history. She was the youngest daughter of the Zavira king, beloved by her people for her intelligence, kindness, and grace. She had known Alex since they were children, and their friendship had been a constant, a simple and innocent thing in a world filled with conflict. Alex had always been a soldier, even as a boy, but Lyra had been something else. She had been the light in his life, the one who made him believe that there was more to the world than war, but the war had stolen that innocence from both of them. As the years passed and the conflict between the Zavira and humanity escalated, Alex and Lyra had lost touch. He had joined the military, becoming a hero, while she had been thrust into the role of a princess, a symbol of her people's strength. But when the war had reached its peak, everything had changed. Lyra had been forced into hiding, her royal family wiped out in a devastating attack that destroyed their capital. The empire had crumbled, and the once great Xavira people had been scattered to the wind. Alex had been unaware of her survival. He had fought on the front lines, focusing on his duty, his mission, and the countless battles he had been forced to fight. But now, standing in front of her, he felt as if time had rewound. The girl he had known was now a woman, a princess, and yet the memories of their childhood together flooded back, each one sharper than the last. "Why didn't you tell me you were alive?" Alex asked, his voice filled with a mix of anger and sadness. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected to find her here, in the ruins of what had once been a thriving city. I couldn't, Lyra answered quietly, her eyes filled with a sorrow that Alex couldn't ignore. The Zavira people needed to believe I was dead. If they had known I was alive, the Loyalists would have hunted me down, killed me, and used my death as a rallying cry. They would have tried to use my name to start the war again.
I couldn't let that happen. I had to disappear.
Alex's heart twisted at the thought. He had always known the burden that leadership placed on a person, but he had never fully understood the weight of it until now. Lyra had been forced to live in hiding, to bear the pain of loss and isolation in silence, all for the sake of her people's future. I didn't want to be a symbol of their past, Lyra continued, her voice shaking. I wanted to be something more, something that could help rebuild, help lead my people to a future where they weren't trapped by the mistakes of our ancestors. But now I'm not sure how to do that. My people are lost. They don't know what they believe anymore. Some want to return to the old ways, to try to rebuild the empire, and others want to leave it all behind and start fresh. I don't know where I fit into that. Alex stepped closer, his hand resting on her shoulder. You are not alone in this, Lyra. You never were. You still have people who believe in you. And you have me. The words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Alex hadn't realized how badly he had missed her, how much he had needed her presence in his life until now. He had spent so many years focusing on the war, on his duty, that he had forgotten the simple things, the things that made him who he was. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes meeting his with a strength he hadn't seen before. She was different, but not in a way that diminished the person she had been. In some ways, she was stronger now, more resilient. The weight of everything she had gone through had shaped her, but it had not broken her. I don't know if I can lead them, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But I have to try. I owe it to them. And to everyone who died. Alex didn't say anything in response. He simply nodded, understanding her more than she realized. He, too, had faced the burden of leadership, though in a very different way. His role as a soldier had not been one of choice but necessity, but it had taught him one thing. Sometimes, the hardest part was knowing when to fight and when to step back, and Lyra had already chosen her path. She wasn't going to give up on her people. Not now, not after everything that had happened. The days that followed were spent in quiet conversation, as Alex and Lyra navigated the complexities of the current state of the galaxy. They spoke of the war, of their experiences, and of the future. Lyra shared the fragile state of the Zavira colonies, the factions that had sprung up in the wake of the Empire's fall. Some wanted to rebuild the Empire in its old image, while others wanted to cast aside the past and form new alliances with other species. Alex listened intently, offering his thoughts and suggestions when needed, but he was careful not to take over the conversation. This wasn't his fight, it was Lyra's. And as much as he wanted to protect her, to shield her from the burdens of leadership, he knew that wasn't what she needed. She needed him as a friend, as someone who understood the weight of the world on her shoulders. One evening, as the two of them sat on the balcony of the crumbling palace, watching the sun set over the barren landscape, Lyra turned to Alex with a solemn expression. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice heavy with the weight of unspoken words. Alex looked at her, his heart beating faster. He could sense that this was something important, something that would change everything. "The Zavira aren't the only ones who want to see me dead," Lyra continued, her voice shaking. "There are others who want to use my bloodline to reignite the war. They've been gathering in the shadows, building an army, waiting for the right moment to strike." Alex's eyes narrowed. "How do you know this?" "I've had spies," she replied, her eyes distant. "They've been watching, listening." I didn't want to believe it at first, but now I know it's true. There are factions within the Zavira who would rather see the galaxy burn than let go of the past. And they won't stop until they've finished what they started. Alex stood up, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Then we'll stop them. We'll stop them together. Lyra stood as well, looking out over the ruined city.
You don't understand, Alex.
These people are powerful. They control much of the remaining military forces. They have access to old Zavira technology that could change the course of this war. And I may be the key to unlocking it. Alex's mind raced. He had known that the Zavira were dangerous, but he hadn't realized how much danger still lurked in the shadows. He had thought the war was over, that the galaxy had entered a new age of peace. But peace was a fragile thing, and it could be shattered in an instant.
You're not alone in this, Lyra, Alex said firmly, stepping closer to her.
We will do this together. We will stop them before they can destroy everything. Lyra turned to face him, her eyes filled with determination. Then it's time to fight, Alex. Time to end the war once and for all. Alex and Lyra's days were spent in tense conversations, strategizing their next steps. They had uncovered more about the factions that wanted to ignite the war again, but it felt like every time they learned something new, the situation grew more complicated. They couldn't afford to be careless. They had to be smart and make every move count. But as the days passed, Alex couldn't help but feel like there was something more to the story, something that Lyra wasn't telling him. The truth of the Zavira's downfall was hidden in layers of secrecy, buried beneath centuries of history and the politics of an empire that no longer existed. The Zavira royal family had once been seen as divine rulers, blessed by the stars themselves. Their bloodline was sacred, their power unrivaled. But as Lyra had told him, much of that power had been lost in the chaos of the war. Despite this, there were still those who believed in the ancient ways, those who were desperate to restore the Zavira Empire to its former glory. These factions were ruthless, and they saw Lyra as the key to bringing it all back. But what Alex couldn't understand was why they had failed to find her sooner. Why had Lyra been allowed to live in hiding for so long? One evening, after another long day of planning, Alex and Lyra found themselves sitting in a quiet room within the palace, the dim light of the setting sun filtering through the cracked windows. Lyra had been quiet for hours, lost in thought, and Alex could see the burden of the past weighing heavily on her. Lyra, Alex began softly, I know you've been through a lot. I know you've carried more than anyone should have to. But there's something you're not telling me. Something about your family, about the past. What are you really hiding? Lyra didn't answer immediately. She stared out the window, her gaze distant. For a moment, Alex thought she might not answer at all. But then she turned to face him, her expression serious. There's a reason they haven't found me, she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. A reason why my survival has been kept secret for so long. It's because of something my father did, something that I'm only just beginning to understand. Alex listened intently, his heart racing. He had suspected there was more to the story, but he had never imagined that it would lead them to this. Lyra had never spoken of her family in such a way before. My father, King Malachar, she continued, was a brilliant leader, but he was also ruthless. He made decisions that shaped the course of our empire, and not all of them were for the good of the Zavira people. He sought power at any cost, and that's what led to the war. He made deals with other species, alliances that turned out to be dangerous, and in the end, those alliances betrayed him. Alex's mind was racing as he processed her words.
You're saying your father caused the war? Lyra nodded slowly. Not directly, but his choices put us on a path that we couldn't escape.
He made enemies of those who once saw us as allies. He thought that we could conquer the galaxy, that the Zavira were destined to rule all. And that arrogance, that belief in our own superiority, is what led to the downfall of the Empire.
Alex could feel the weight of her words.
He had heard stories of the Zavira's once great empire, how they had been a force to be reckoned with. but he had never understood the full extent of their ambition, their need to dominate. And now, hearing it from Lyra, he could see the dangerous legacy her father had left behind. "But why hasn't anyone else figured this out?" Alex asked. "Why did your father's enemies wait so long to make their move?" "Because of what he hid," Lyra answered, her voice barely a whisper. "Before he died, my father made sure that certain secrets would never see the light of day. He hid them in the most secure places, in ancient vaults deep within the Empire. These secrets could destroy the Zavira forever. If they were found, it would shatter everything. The legacy, the history, everything we thought we knew about our people." Alex's heart sank as he realized the gravity of what Lyra was saying. The fate of the Zavira, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The secret her father had kept hidden was not just a simple family matter. It was something far darker, something that could reignite the war and cause unimaginable destruction.
"We need to find these secrets, Lyra," Alex said urgently.
"We need to understand what your father hid before someone else does."
Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "I know,
But finding them won't be easy. My father was clever. He made sure no one could ever uncover them. Only a few people even knew they existed, and most of them are dead now." Alex stood up, his mind working through the possibilities. "Then we start looking. We find the vaults and we uncover whatever it is your father left behind. We can't let it fall into the wrong hands." Lyra nodded, but Alex could see the hesitation in her eyes. "I'm scared, Alex. I don't know what we'll find."
I don't know if I can handle it. He reached out, taking her hand in his.
"You don't have to do this alone. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." For the first time in days, Lyra smiled. A small, bittersweet smile. "Thank you, Alex. I'm glad you're here." The next morning, they began their search in earnest. The palace had once been a place of grandeur, a symbol of the Zavira's power. But now, it was a ruin, its halls echoing with the memories of the past. They scoured every room, every chamber, looking for any clue that might lead them to the hidden vaults. They found nothing in the obvious places, nothing that stood out as important. It wasn't until they ventured deep into the heart of the palace, into the secret chambers that had been closed off to all but the royal family, that they discovered something. A hidden door, tucked away behind a tapestry in the deepest part of the palace, led them to a stairwell that spiraled down into the darkness. The air grew colder as they descended, and Alex could feel the tension in the air, the weight of something long forgotten pressing down on them. At the bottom of the stairs, they found a massive stone door, covered in intricate carvings. The symbols on the door were unfamiliar to Alex, but Lyra seemed to recognize them. She stepped forward, her fingers tracing the patterns. "This is it," she whispered. "This is the vault." Alex stood back, allowing her space as she worked. The carvings shifted under her touch, and the door began to open with a loud groan. As it slowly swung open, the darkness beyond revealed a room filled with old relics, ancient scrolls, and holographic devices. But at the center of the room was something far more disturbing, a pedestal upon which sat a small, glowing object. Lyra's eyes widened as she stepped forward, her hands trembling. "This is it," she said softly. "This is what my father hid. This is what could destroy everything." Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he looked at the object. It was small, no larger than a fist, but it radiated an unnatural energy. He could feel its power, its potential, and he knew that this was the key to everything. The question was, what would they do with it now? The chamber where the pedestal stood seemed to hum with an energy that neither Alex nor Lyra could fully comprehend. The small, glowing object that lay before them was more than just an ancient artifact. It was a key, a weapon, a piece of history that could reshape the future. Alex could feel the weight of its power, and he knew they had to be cautious. The discovery of this relic could be the beginning of something much bigger than either of them had imagined. Lyra stood silently, her eyes locked on the glowing object. She had known this moment would come, but she hadn't been prepared for it. The fate of her people, the remnants of the Zavira Empire, lay in her hands. The decision she made now could either save them or condemn them to further destruction. She stepped forward, her fingers hovering over the artifact. She could feel its pulse, the way it seemed to beckon her. But she hesitated. "This is what my father wanted me to find," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "But what if it's too dangerous? What if this was the mistake that started everything in the first place?" Alex stepped closer to her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder.
"We can't turn back now, Lyra. Whatever this is, we'll face it together."
"We'll figure it out, just like we always have." Lyra nodded, taking a deep breath before carefully lifting the object from the pedestal. As her fingers wrapped around it, the room seemed to come alive, the walls vibrating with energy. A low hum filled the air, and Alex could feel the temperature in the room rise. The object was reacting to her touch, its energy awakening after centuries of slumber. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the darkness, startling them both. "You shouldn't have done that." Alex spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon, but there was no threat in sight. Instead, from the shadows stepped a figure he had hoped he would never see again. It was a man he had once fought alongside, a man who had been a friend during the early days of the war. But now, his presence here, in this chamber, made everything feel wrong. "Derek?" Alex's voice was a mix of disbelief and anger. "What are you doing here?" Derek's cold eyes met Alex's, and for a moment there was nothing but silence between them. "I've come to stop you from making a terrible mistake," Derek said, his tone sharp. "You don't know what you're holding, Lyra. That object. It's not just a relic. It's a weapon of unimaginable power, and it's been hidden for a reason." Lyra stepped back, holding the object carefully in her hands. "What do you mean, my father hid it?" "Yes, but why?" "What is it?" Derek's lips curled into a sneer. "Your father wasn't the noble leader you thought he was. He was a fool, a man blinded by his own arrogance. He thought that by controlling this weapon he could secure the future of the Zavira, but instead, he doomed us all. That weapon is not meant to be wielded by anyone, least of all you."
Alex's heart raced as he stepped forward, standing between Derek and Lyra.
"What are you talking about, Derek? Why are you trying to stop us?" "You've been one of the people fighting to rebuild the Zavira. This is the key to that future." Derek's expression hardened, his hands clenched into fists. "You don't understand, Alex. The weapon was never meant to rebuild. It was created to destroy. And if you let Lyra use it, she'll bring about the very end of everything we've worked for." Lyra's voice was calm but filled with determination. "Then tell me, Derek, what am I supposed to do? Let my people suffer forever? Let them be scattered and broken while these factions continue to fight over what's left of our empire?" Derek didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at the artifact in Lyra's hands with a mixture of fear and contempt. "Your father didn't care about rebuilding. He cared about power. The weapon doesn't care who uses it. It's an ancient technology that can rewrite the very fabric of reality. It's a tool for war, not peace."
And if you try to use it, it will tear everything apart. Alex's mind raced as he processed Derek's words.
The weapon could rewrite reality. It could change the course of history, and Lyra was the only one who could wield it. But at what cost? If Derek was right, if this weapon had the potential to destroy everything, could they afford to use it? "Then what are we supposed to do?" Alex asked, his voice quiet but firm. "Let the galaxy fall apart? Let it continue to spiral into chaos? We've already lost so much. We can't let the war continue in any form." Derek's eyes softened for a moment, a flicker of regret passing through them.
"I don't have the answers, Alex, But I know this. There's a better way.
We don't need to use that weapon. We can rebuild. We can find a way to restore peace without destroying everything in our path. Lyra's voice was steady, though it carried the weight of 1,000 decisions. I can't promise peace if I don't have the power to protect it. If this weapon is what it takes to stop the war, to stop the bloodshed, then I will use it. But I need to know that it won't destroy everything we've worked for. I need to know that it will give us a chance to rebuild. The room grew quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the artifact in Lyra's hands. She felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her, each moment dragging her closer to an unknown future. She had always been taught that the Zavira were destined to rule the galaxy, that their empire was invincible. But now, with the weight of her father's mistakes on her shoulders, she realized that she had a choice: to follow in his footsteps or to chart her own course. "Derek," Lyra said, her voice filled with resolve, "I will not allow my people to perish. If this weapon is what it takes to protect them, then I will use it. But I will not do it blindly. I will not repeat the mistakes of the past." Derek stepped back, his expression filled with sorrow. "Then you leave me no choice." In a blur of motion, Derek lunged toward Lyra, his hand reaching for the artifact. Alex reacted instantly, stepping between them and pushing Derek back with force. "You're not taking it, Derek!" "Not now, not ever." Derek's face twisted in anger as he struggled to regain his footing. "You don't understand, Alex. I'm trying to save you both. That weapon will destroy everything you love, and you're too blind to see it." Lyra held the artifact close to her chest, her eyes locked onto Derek's. "I am not blind, Derek. I see what's at stake. But I won't let you stand in my way. I have to do this. For my people, for the future." Derek's expression faltered, and for a brief moment Alex saw the man he once knew, the man who had fought by his side, the man who had believed in a better future. But that man was gone, replaced by a man consumed by fear and regret. "I'll stop you," Derek hissed, his hand reaching for a hidden weapon at his side. Before Derek could react, Alex struck first. The fight was swift but brutal. Alex was a trained soldier, and he knew Derek well enough to anticipate his every move. The two men collided with the force of a storm, each trying to overpower the other. But in the end, Alex was faster, stronger. With one final move, he disarmed Derek and held him down, forcing him to yield. "I won't let you destroy everything," Alex said, breathing heavily. Derek glared up at him, his chest heaving with frustration.
"You're making a mistake." "No," Alex replied, his voice steady.
The mistake was thinking that the past could be fixed with more violence. "We're going to make sure this doesn't end in destruction. We're going to rebuild together." Lyra stepped forward, her hand gently touching Alex's shoulder. "It's over, Derek. You've lost." Derek looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and sadness. "You'll regret this, Lyra. I hope you know that."
Without another word, Derek turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Alex and Lyra alone in the chamber.
Lyra took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. The artifact still hummed softly in her hands, its power undeniable. She knew that the choice she had made would change everything. But as long as they had each other, she believed they could find a way to make it right. "We're not done yet," Alex said, his voice filled with determination. "The war isn't over. But together, we'll find a way to end it for good." Lyra nodded, her heart filled with hope for the first time in years.
"Together."